Welcome. I am Jane Andrews, and I am the new president of the League of Women Voters of San Diego. We're so glad to have all of you here today. Thank you. And we have several special members. We have a representative from the county sheriff's office. We have just a wonderful array of longtime members and new members here. And I'm glad to see you all. I believe Jeannie Brown, who's sitting here to my right, does not need an introduction for most of you. But for those who are new, Jeannie joined the League in 2003 and joined the board in 2006. She is a retired high school math and science teacher, and she was our president from 2011 to 2017. She's done an enormous amount. She's one of the backbones of this league. She's also very well regarded at the state level and has worked on the LWV of California Criminal Justice Committee. And she formed the San Diego Criminal Justice Committee in 2018. So I'm proud to turn this over to Jeannie.
Thank you, Jane. Let's see if we can can you hear me right? Okay. Thank you all for coming today. It's nice to see all of you, a lot of friendly faces and some new people.
Point it right at your mouth.
Right at my mouth, like that? Okay. All right. So if you haven't already done it, please silence your cell phones, and I will go ahead and get started. So I'd like to first introduce our panel. It's composed of members of the Criminal Justice Interest Group, and this is the order they will be speaking. I'm Jeannie Brown, the chair, and Monica Munoz is a new member and also newly retired from local government position. Tom Packard is a retired professor of social work from San Diego State, and Stephanie Sontag is an active member. This presentation is based on a report that we wrote. It took about a year to put this together, and so we are trying to shorten it. So but this will be on our the League website, and I think the North County League's website as well. So I'm going to get started. A compelling and fundamental value underlying public submission to our criminal justice system is that of justice. In our country, our endorsement and acceptance of a criminal justice system is based upon an expectation that it will treat us fairly and that the system will always be founded upon fairness and decency. The League of Women Voters, acting in concert, a little bit higher. The League of Women Voters, acting in concert with positions taken by the statewide and local membership, is deeply concerned about the need for public involvement in advocating for change in the policies and practice causing unnecessary suffering and death in our local jails. As we go through this presentation, we will be mentioning behavior of the San Diego County Sheriff, Kelly Martinez, and that of some of her deputies, those of whom work in the county jail system. We do not want to paint all of them with the same brush. We know that there are dedicated employees who want to improve the system that we have here. Our goal is to point out the terrible conditions in our jails and to change them. We will share many suggestions on how to do that. We do think that it will take more public pressure in order to do that. So what is really going on in our jails? No, it's not showing. Okay. So we have we'll follow this in an outline. So this outline, we have introduction with basic support, the overview and history, The examples, we'll have a number of examples, but there's just a small sample of what has really happened. Probable causes of preventable deaths, some suggested improvements, previous reports and interviews, recommendations that we have, and our thanks to many. And finally, a summary. So with the introduction, for decades, San Diego County has had the highest rate of deaths in the jails compared to any other California counties. And many other groups have created reports on this topic, yet because the League is trusted for the information that we share with the public, we felt that the need to share these reports with organizations throughout the county. We are beginning with this League event, but hope that we can spread the word throughout the county to many other groups, and to put pressure on the Board of Supervisors and the Sheriff to right the wrongs that have been occurring in our jails. Our concerns include changing the conditions that have been causing deaths and suffering in the jails. And our sources, we used information available in reports and articles provided by the government agencies, advocates, legal experts, and news media, particularly the Union Tribune. So, what is meant by the League way? So whenever the League takes a stand on a topic, you can trust that it is only when the topic has been studied and shared with League members, who then come to consensus to the wording and meaning. That is what is meant by the League way. So the League in California came to consensus to create a position on policing. The parts of that position, it's about a 2-page position. The parts of that position that are applicable are listed here. So to ensure that all correctional systems provide humane, dignified, non-discriminatory treatment of incarcerated people and personnel, including appropriate health care and access to community-based rehabilitation programs. To eliminate the practice of solitary confinement, and to ensure that incarcerated people and corrections officers have clear, safe, and accessible ways to report abuse. Another very important thing to base our study on is the 8th Amendment of the Constitution. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Our law enforcement today is not following the Constitution. We need this to be corrected. And now I would like to pass it on to Monica.
So I'll give you a little background. The Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board, also referred to as CLRB, was established by San Diego voters in 1990. CLRB is made up of 11 volunteer members who independently and impartially investigate complaints against San Diego County Sheriff's deputies and probation officers. They also investigate deaths in the jail facilities. There are 7 jail facilities in San Diego County: the Central Jail in downtown San Diego, the East Mesa Reentry Facility in Otay Mesa, George Bailey Detention Facility in Otay Mesa, Las Colinas Detention and Reentry Facility in Santee, which is a women's facility, the Rock Mountain Detention Facility in Otay Mesa, the South Bay Detention Facility in Chula Vista, and the Vista Detention Facility in Vista. And of course, that's a tremendous amount of incarcerated persons. It's a tremendous amount of staff. The Sheriff of San Diego County is an elected position. Sheriff Kelly Martinez was elected in 2022 and is serving a 6-year term. The juvenile detention facilities in our county are operated by the probation department, the San Diego County Probation Department. And between 2006 and 2020, 185 people have died while in custody at the county's adult facilities. And in 2022, more than 200 incarcerated people overdosed while in custody in these facilities. Many were saved by Narcan, which is a drug used to restore breathing in individuals who are experiencing opioid overdoses. So I'm going to share some information about some loved ones that have been lost. Just 4 individual stories, which are heart-wrenching, and they're somewhat disturbing when it comes to the details. But this is all information that has been published in the San Diego Union Tribune, which is many of our information, a lot of our information came from them. But I think it's important to have a perspective on what these people are experiencing. So these are preventable deaths that have occurred in San Diego jails. Eric Van Teen struggled with mental illness and drug addiction, but he had his condition under control and had moved to San Diego from Arizona to start a new life. He was arrested in December of 2023, and one day prior to his arrest, a man named Walter Mayron was also arrested. Mayron also struggled with mental illness and drug challenges, and their paths crossed very tragically at the San Diego Central Jail. The two were placed in a cell that measured under 75 square feet with another man. That means 3 people, a practice called triple bunking. The small quarters caused a fight during which Mayron beat Mr. Van Teen unconscious. Mr. Van Teen suffered severe brain damage and was in a coma for 4 months. When he awoke, he couldn't feed or bathe himself and could barely communicate. A few months later, he developed a lung infection. His family made the very difficult decision to withdraw care, and he died in November of 2024. Mr. Van Teen's brother was quoted in the newspaper saying that the decision to place his brother in a small cell with 2 other men was reckless, inhumane, and representative of a broader systemic failure. The San Diego Sheriff's Department had been warned multiple times by state regulators to stop the practice of triple bunking. The San Diego County Civil Grand Jury wrote a report about the practice, calling it a configuration likely to cause conflict. Their report indicated that this practice had been going on since 2016. In November of 2024, Sheriff Martinez wrote a letter to the Board of State and Community Corrections indicating that the department was currently in the process of removing all triple bunks from detention facilities in our county. I should also mention that there are other instances of jail deaths where incarcerated persons fell from the top of a triple bunk and later died. Walter Mayron was sentenced to 12 years in prison in this case for the beating death of Mr. Van Teen. Mr. Van Teen's death was preventable. Thank you, Jeannie. In 2019, 24-year-old Elisa Cerna was a few weeks pregnant, struggling with alcohol and drug addiction and drug withdrawals when she was arrested and taken to Las Colinas, which, as I mentioned, is the detention facility for women operated by the San Diego Sheriff's Department. Ms. Cerna told the medical staff of her heroin and alcohol use and that she was suffering from withdrawal symptoms. Staff placed her in a medical isolation unit for observation, but according to several investigations after her death, they exhibited gross negligence in failing to treat her. Ms. Cerna was getting sick, she was having seizures, she fainted, all under the observation of the Las Colinas medical staff. At least one doctor told her she was faking her symptoms and failed to perform a physical exam or treat her other than giving her a shot of Ativan, which is a sedative. This action, according to the medical board, did nothing to treat Ms. Cerna's withdrawal. 5 days after being arrested, Ms. Cerna died while in the medical observation unit. One doctor and nurse were criminally charged with involuntary manslaughter, but not convicted. This doctor's license was initially suspended, and she eventually surrendered her license. Another Las Colinas doctor who was also involved in Ms. Cerna's case had her license revoked by the medical board. Ms. Cerna's family won a $15 million civil suit against the County of San Diego and one of its healthcare providers, healthcare contractors. Her death was preventable. Mr. Keith Bach suffered from diabetes for many years. He used insulin. We all know people with diabetes, a very, very common ailment that people suffer from. He had type 1 diabetes. He would on occasion experience mood swings if he was low on insulin. This would cause erratic behavior, and his widow said that she would typically call 911 and the paramedics would come out and treat him with insulin and he would recover. But on September 25th, 2023, the Chula Vista police responded to the Bach home. Mr. Bach was arrested for vandalism and for making threats in his own home. Mr. Bach was too sick from his type 1 diabetes to be booked into jail, so he was taken by police officers to a hospital. Once he was stabilized, the officers took him to San Diego Central Jail where he was booked. About 90 minutes after booking, Mr. Bach fainted and was rushed to a hospital. The next morning, he was returned to San Diego Central Jail where he was given 10 units of insulin. Mr. Bach told the jail staff that he would need insulin, and his records reflected that he was a type 1 diabetic on insulin. But despite requests for Mr. Bach over the next 19 hours, despite other incarcerated people telling the jail staff that he needed medical attention, and despite Mrs. Bach, who received notifications on her phone when he was low on insulin, despite her calling and going to the jail to ask that her husband receive medical treatment, the jail staff failed to administer insulin. According to the San Diego County Medical Examiner's report, this failure caused Mr. Bach to go into diabetic ketoacidosis, and he died on September 28, 2023. Mr. Bach's case is one of two in the past 20 or so years where the cause of death was ruled a homicide by the San Diego County Medical Examiner's Office. The case was presented to the District Attorney's Office, but after consideration, the DA declined to prosecute, citing, point one, no one person could be held criminally responsible for Mr. Bach's death, and California law does not have a statute by which criminal liability can be imposed on a government institution. Mr. Bach's family is suing the County of San Diego for his preventable death. And the final case is Mr. Lonnie Rupard, who was in his mid-40s, and his case was also ruled a homicide by the County Medical Examiner. He died at the San Diego Central Jail on March 17, 2022. The medical examiner cited ineffective care by jail staff as a factor in his death. Mr. Rupard struggled with schizophrenia and had lost 60 pounds, 60 pounds, in 3 months. That was the time that he was incarcerated. According to Mr. Rupard's autopsy, he was 5 feet 9 inches tall, but at the time of his death weighed 105 pounds. Mr. Rupard's family is suing the County of San Diego, and in that suit is the following information. A court-ordered psychiatrist visited Mr. Rupard on March 14th and determined because of severe mental illness, he was not competent to stand trial for his initial court appearance. The psychiatrist noted the filthy state of Mr. Rupard's cell after observing trash and feces in the cell. The psychiatrist recommended Mr. Rupard be transferred to a state hospital to receive antipsychotic medication involuntarily as allowed by law in cases like these, but the transfer never happened. Mr. Rupard died 3 days after that psychiatrist's visit from pneumonia, malnutrition, and dehydration, according to the medical examiner's findings. His death was also, as I mentioned, ruled a homicide by the San Diego County Medical Examiner. And now, Tom Packer.
A cause of a jail death may not be straightforward, and not all jail deaths can be prevented. Medical examiners make determinations of a cause of death and also the manner of the death. Official manners of death include accidental, homicide, suicide, natural, or undetermined. For our purposes here, causes can be seen as underlying conditions that can contribute to a death. A natural death can be caused by a drug overdose or improper behaviors such as neglect or mistreatment by staff. Okay, good. I'm getting used to the flow here. The lack of disability accommodations can be a partial cause of a death. A current lawsuit has led to some changes, mainly regarding physical disabilities. So-called invisible disabilities, including mental illnesses and neurological conditions, need more attention. A recent state audit identified health concern areas that included intake evaluations, follow-up care, safety checks, and delays in medical emergencies. The sheriff later reported progress in addressing recommendations, but these concerns still need documentation and monitoring. Officer misconduct includes staff possibly bringing drugs into the jails, or deputies not adequately performing their duties, such as safety checks. In 2024, a deputy who injured an incarcerated person was indicted by a grand jury and was placed on administrative assignment. The sheriff has reported changes made to prevent drugs entering the jails, but she still has refused to allow 24/7 screening of all staff entering the jails. Poor infrastructure and maintenance, such as video cameras not working or data being deleted, and disabilities accommodations are examples of facilities changes needed. The extent and wide range of jail deaths and substandard performance over time might point to leadership as a factor. The sheriff may not be adequately communicating her expectations and the urgency for change, or providing a climate or a culture to ensure that behaviors do get changed. Management and supervisors may not be ensuring compliance, or staff may not be properly trained. This section emphasizes possible solutions because we used only secondary data sources and didn't do feasibility studies and best practices research. But these ideas can be used as starting points for decreasing preventable jail deaths. A preventable jail death likely has multiple contributing factors. Based on the range and complexity of possible causes, solutions could be very specific, but more likely would need to address multiple factors, suggesting a systems problem regarding multiple systems level solutions. Opportunities for decreasing unnecessary deaths at the front end include diversion for health, behavioral health, and disabilities prior to booking, a greater use of book and release, and bail reform. The county's Alternatives to Incarceration initiative might offer other opportunities. While the sheriff finally accepted the CLRB recommendations to screen staff for drugs, this is only being done on a random basis. Screening all staff using best practices procedures is likely to decrease the amount of drugs entering the jails. There may be training and supervision issues regarding deputies. Obviously, all should be fully trained for expected duties and receive close supervision to ensure that standards are always being met. Many deaths involved improper or ineffective behavior by staff. All policies and procedures for staff behavior should meet best practices and accreditation standards. There should be ongoing quality assurance reviews and documentation of variations from standards with improvement plans. A recent grand jury report made excellent recommendations for better data dashboards and the use of continuous quality improvement processes to identify problems and make improvements. This should include extensive involvement of all key stakeholders, including staff and representation of incarcerated persons, such as family members and community advocates. There should be full compliance with all disability laws and standards, including monitoring, documentation, and corrective actions. In spite of recent changes based on the state audit, health and mental health care in the jails remains inadequate. Recommendations from past and current audits, Senate Bill 519 and all lawsuits should be implemented and fully documented with proof and monitoring of results. The sheriff's resistance to complying with aspects of Senate Bill 519, which requires the sheriffs to release internal in-custody death reports publicly, was documented in our report. Recently announced changes based on the Cerna lawsuit include no specifics regarding ongoing compliance and impacts on actual practice. The sheriff has announced many changes in practices. There should be precise, prompt, and ongoing documentation for all of those. The sheriff should be fully transparent in sharing such information with the community. The Board of Supervisors could more aggressively use its budgeting authority to get the sheriff to make changes. The San Diego Democratic Party and a UT editorial advocated connecting the sheriff's budget to decreasing preventable deaths. The board could consider requiring that lawsuit payments currently paid from the general fund be paid by the sheriff's budget. If the sheriff can't or won't use more effective leadership behavior to implement needed systemic change, there may be other options. The sheriff could be voted out of office or recalled. Perhaps the state constitution could be amended to allow an appointed sheriff. Los Angeles and San Mateo counties each passed measures that give their Board of Supervisors authority to remove the sheriff with a 4-1 vote. The board may be able to take control of the jails, as was done when a federal judge took control of New York City's Riker Islands jail and appointed an independent official to run it. Obviously, all equipment in jails, including video cameras, sorry, I'm getting confused here. Video cameras and communication equipment should always function, and a video should be preserved. A recent UT article reported that over half of the law firm's cases had missing audio or video. Better pay for deputies may lead to hiring more competent and committed staff. The Board of Supervisors recently gave the clerk oversight of civilian staff, which should be very impactful. Many jail deaths have involved inappropriate behavior by medical staff. The Critical Incident Review Board has been resisting sharing information with the CLRB, the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board, and the community, using the presence of an attorney at their meetings as an excuse. There must be legal ways to create greater transparency on the part of the CIRB. Yesterday, the Board of Supervisors approved a proposal by Supervisor Monica Montgomery Stepp to do a feasibility study for an Office of Inspector General to monitor the Sheriff's Office and make recommendations for changes. This would augment but not duplicate current mechanisms of the clerk. At that board meeting, the sheriff opposed the proposal and said she is looking at a third-party administrator peer review process with reporting to the sheriff. We should have added that as a bullet. This was something that we just discovered this morning. This list of possible solutions is not exhaustive. It represents ideas we gathered from sources including community advocates, family members who have had a relative die in the jails, experts in corrections reform, legislation, news media reports, and lawsuits. Some ideas require further study regarding their feasibility and appropriateness. Making major changes on these problems will involve a complex combination of actions to address causes that range from individual cases to the system's level. For some context regarding our sheriff, data here from the 2013-2023 police scorecard in California show how our sheriff compares with other California counties on some key factors. Of course, simple statistics don't tell a complete story, but could be used by the sheriff to suggest the need for further improvements in many areas. Overall, the San Diego Sheriff's Office rated at 28% according to this scorecard. This graph shows, might be kind of hard to read some of it, that $97.8 million, or 62% of the county's payout dollars, came from lawsuits regarding the sheriff's office. When more years are included, the amount of payouts for deaths and injuries now exceeds $80 million. Some of the solutions covered here, if implemented, should create future cost avoidances, spending some money now to save even more money in the future, not to mention improving services and outcomes for incarcerated persons. Of course, this doesn't include the significant and incalculable non-financial costs to victims and family members from preventable jail deaths and mistreatment. And now Stephanie will discuss our interviews and previous reports about the jails.
Which is the slide, and which is that's the slide, and which is the bullet. Over the past 2 years, we have interviewed professionals, sometimes more than once, over a broad range, and we're indebted to their expertise and willingness to share their perspective and advice. We have talked to Paul Parker, former executive officer for CLERB, Andrea St. Julian's, CEO for San Diegans for Justice, Yusef Miller, Director of North County Equity and Justice Creation. I think they're all up, aren't they? Yeah. Max Huntsman, Inspector General for Los Angeles County, Stephen Campman, San Diego County Medical Examiner, Gay Grunfeld, Managing Partner of Rosen, B.N. Galvin and Grunfeld, LLP in San Francisco, Brett Kalina, current Executive Officer for CLERB, Jeff McDonald, reporter for the San Diego UT, Teresa Adams Hyder, former Assistant Sheriff for Detention Services, Dave Myers, former commander and 33-year veteran for San Diego County Sheriff's Officer, who ran for sheriff in 2008 and 2022. So we gained a broad range of information from those folks. Many associations and agencies have studied the San Diego County jails and made recommendations for improvement. As you can see or will see, a report concerning the safety of the jail was completed in 2018, with the latest report completed by the 2024-2025 grand jury. Some of the conclusions are the sheriff needs to be more transparent and accountable for actions by the deputies and conditions in the jails. Citizens need to be more informed about the conditions in the jails when they vote for sheriff, and in the years between votes or between elections to hold the sheriff accountable. The County Board of Supervisors must address the problems of having the mentally ill arrested and taken into custody in a jail setting. And CLRB and other oversight boards need to be given the tools to do their job effectively. I can't do two things at once, obviously. All right, there are other recommendations that are common to the reports. Time and again, clerks' hands have been tied when they could not obtain the information needed to make a decision. Some blame clerk for inaction, when in many cases they were not able to get the information regarding an incident due to privacy rules having to do with medical issues, for example, particularly deaths. Each one of these reports was amazed at the lack of records kept or information that should be converted to data. Data can be used to show improvement or the reverse. Again, each report gave examples of a very lax system of safety checks that have often contributed to medical emergencies and death. Other jail systems are using tablets that deputies can take with them on their rounds that record the time that they conducted the observation and the conditions of each inmate that was checked. This information can be saved and used to demonstrate improvements along the way. Oversight boards and the public can be assured that promises are kept and those in custody are being kept safe. Mental health screening is now done upon arriving at our detention facilities, but often the recommendations for follow-up that are indicated by the initial screening are not implemented. For example, the individual may need a special cell assignment to ensure their safety that's not always followed. Also, an individual could be followed up to ensure they're taking their prescribed medication. Those details must be followed for their safety. We're back. Okay. Mental health screening is, as previously mentioned, the actual activities of the deputies in the jail must be memorialized so everyone can be assured that, first, the deputies are actually doing their jobs. For example, the safety and wellness checks are conducted faithfully, and again, that can be documented so everyone can see. Second, the conditions in the jail must provide for the well-being and safety, not only for those incarcerated, but also for the deputies themselves. For example, all alert buttons must be checked on a fixed schedule so the deputies can be alerted when there is an emergency. All cameras must be fully functioning at all times. The time in which deputies respond to an emergency alert must also be monitored and documented to minimize the harm to those incarcerated. The San Diego Sheriff, as she has reminded the Board of Supervisors, is an elected position and is accountable to the voters. As a result, the public must be informed of the sheriff's performance so the sheriff can be held responsible for their actions at the next election, good or bad. The San Diego County jails are the largest mental health facilities in the region. Depending on the nature of crimes, i.e. whether the person is a danger to the public or a flight risk, alternatives to incarceration should be explored for those suffering from mental health concerns. CLRB is a critical oversight organization for improvements to the jails and safety of those incarcerated. It must be given all the tools necessary to completely review incidences in the jail. Recently, CLRB, over the vehement objection of the sheriff, was given authority to review medical care for those who died in custody. CLRB has asked for, but not yet received, authority to review all medical care, not just that involved in deaths, to make CLRB a more effective organization. We want to thank Jeff McDonald and Kelly Davis of their San Diego Union Tribune for all of their work, Deidre McLeod for her wonderful collection of pertinent articles regarding this topic. Yeah, okay.
This is the one I...
San Diegans for Justice for their diligence in both the city and county of San Diego. SURJ North County, San Diego for sharing their information with us. So thank you all for all of your hard work for all those I mentioned. And I'm going to hand this off to Jean.
We're not done.
Oh, okay.
It sounded like it, yes. Okay, is that better? So, in summary, if you find after listening to this that you wish to engage in the dialogue to promote change in the way our local jails are operated, or simply to find out more information, there are many ways to accomplish this. Community members can attend and speak at meetings of CLRB, the Board of Supervisors, and the County Behavioral Advocacy Board. By the way, that can be done on Zoom, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home. Systemic change can be advanced by developing relationships with staff at the Board of Supervisors and state legislative offices who are working on these issues. Email the sheriff, the Board of Supervisors, anyone with the power to help bring about change. On a more personal level, you could support affected family members and advocates for reform by attending rallies, press conferences, and town hall meetings. It should be noted that our report does not address the incarceration of youth in local facilities operated by the San Diego Probation Department. However, that's an area of concern that warrants further study and community involvement. And finally, the League of Women Voters of San Diego will continue to seek information about the conditions in the local jails. We will also continue to comment with organizations and advocates who believe, as we do, that the legitimacy that is needed to support the rule of law can only be sustained if the values of fairness and decency are upheld and fought for by an informed and involved public. In that end, we will continue to share information with the public, whether in presentations open to the public or in published media. Yes, please stay connected. If you are not a member of one of the leagues, we hope you join. And if not, you can always attend our events. They are open to the public. And please support our work. We're always thankful for any support we get, and thank you for attending today. If you know of any groups who might like to hear this information, we would be happy to present to them. Also, this has been recorded, so anyone who wants to goes on our website and looks for the events, you can see the tape that Chris is doing for us right here. And so now we are opening up to Q&A, and now Jane. Oh, and I forgot, Tom wanted to say a few things.
Yeah, given some of the people that showed up to here, I asked Jean if we could go off script a little bit, and I just want to recognize some of the people that are mentioned in the report. Dustin Lopez, the assistant sheriff that's in charge of detention. I've been meeting with him and his staff with another group of people regularly, and really appreciate your time and interest, and I think he shares our goal of not having any unpreventable deaths. Darwin Fishman with the Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego has been very involved for years, especially supporting some of the family members. And Andrea St. Julian with San Diegans for Justice was a major source. And Jeff McDonald, Kelly Davis, I guess, is off on assignment, but if we didn't have the work of Jeff McDonald and Kelly Davis, I don't know where we would be. We would not be nearly where we are. So we want to thank Jeff and Kelly for their outstanding reporting over the years. But I think what struck me is having these people show up here and all of you and your role is such an important organization in the community. Yesterday at the board meeting, when they were talking about this Office of Inspector General, one thing I picked up is both the board and the sheriff are committed to collaboration, and I think we all need to work harder at that, and communication and being more directly in touch with each other. So that's why I especially appreciate Dustin and some of the advocates and people showing up, and we're committed to helping facilitate that where we can. And I forget if you mentioned, the report's going to be at the website, so that'll have some detail. And I think Jane mentioned it's a working document, so if we got anything wrong or there are things we didn't include, we want to update it and keep working on that.
Okay, thank you. And now, Jane?
Okay, do we have questions?
Yes, we do.
Does San Diego County use solitary confinement for vulnerable people, including mental illness? And then there is a question, what is CLERB?
So the CLERB is CLERB, the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board, which was established in 1990 by the voters of San Diego, and it's an oversight body, essentially, of civilians. And these people volunteer their time to review what happens in this case, the San Diego County jail system. But, and also there are many of these boards all over the country, over law enforcement, city law enforcement, and county law enforcement. So that's CLERB. And as Jeannie mentioned, I believe their meetings are held online. So if you're interested, you can go to the County of San Diego website and look up the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board, and it tells you when the meetings are, and you can participate in those meetings at your leisure when the meetings occur. The second question here that I wanted to address, because I just looked this up, Jeff McDonald and Kelly Davis just did a story that published October 20th. The question was, does San Diego County use solitary confinement for vulnerable people, including mental illness? And let me just quote, this information came directly from the Sheriff's Department. As of Friday, last Friday, there were 251 people in what they call administrative separation, was essentially is solitary confinement. 23 hours of the day, they don't have interaction with other human beings. As of Friday, there were 251 people in administrative separation in San Diego jails. According to a Sheriff's Office spokesperson, slightly fewer than half have been flagged as having serious mental illness. And further in the article, which I recommend that you read, and also there's a KPBS interview that Jeff and Kelly just did with Jade Heidman, which I think published today on KPBS radio, talks about the fact that when you have mental illness, the last thing you want to do is have that person not have any interaction with other human beings.
Regarding the high rate of jail deaths, compared to other California counties, could some of this be attributed to higher drug use in our county?
Actually, that was looked at, and we actually have a higher rate of drug use in the jails than outside. Than in the county, and you would think that if there is a mechanism to keep the drugs out, it should be much lower, if not non-existing. And so, no, that's disgracefully.
Can I? And one other thing to keep in mind when we're talking about, because Jeannie mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, the 8th Amendment, which is part of the Constitution and provides us with the ability to be treated fairly and humanely and respectfully, even if we're incarcerated. So when even if a person does have a drug problem, if they are in the custody of a government organization, they are to be cared for. So it's really important for us to remember that. Yes, people do make bad choices which result in them ending up in incarceration, but that doesn't mean that their medical needs or emotional needs or any of that should be disregarded.
Kelly Martinez, our sheriff, has argued that the county jails are getting safer and that all she needs are more resources, not more oversight. Is her argument valid?
And I don't want to take too much time, but one of these slides that had a list that San Diego County actually is higher, has more funds than most of the other counties. Maybe Jane can find that slide for me.
It was 80 and 90%.
What was it?
The two slides, your bullet points.
Yes.
One was 80, like 1% more resources, and the other one was 91% more versus other agencies in the state.
Yeah.
So 80 and 90% more. They're number 8 and number 1 and number 2 in terms of resources. Top 10%, top 20%.
And Jane, can I respond also?
Yes.
The slide will be
wait a
available
second.
online.
That's it. That's the one. That's the one.
Through our website.
Okay.
Can you do that?
Yeah, I would add that I think when she said things are getting better, there's probably truth to that, and I think there are multiple truths, and I think it's good when things are getting better, and I believe they're working hard and they're wanting to get things to be better, but we're just hoping that all the complex different realities can kind of get looked at together to see what some common understanding about where things really are and what needs to be done.
Could I just?
So I think this slide shows that the more funding per capita, more officers per population, that would probably answer that question.
I just wanted to add that this is a difficult population that the sheriff is dealing with. We have to factor that in as well. And they have an obligation to keep them safe and well. But we do have to keep in mind that keeping them safe also has to keep the other incarcerated people safe and keep the deputies safe too. So when Tom says there are a number of factors, there really are a huge number of factors to consider.
What is the hiring criteria for deputies? And what training do deputies get to handle mental health issues?
Do any of you? I couldn't say exactly, but I know that they get training on it.
Yeah, maybe Tom.
Dustin Lopez, do you know?
Let's try Tom.
Would you
And,
do one?
I don't want to put Dustin on the spot at a time like this. I just appreciate you being here for all this, but I think we can make a commitment to looking that up. I think some of it's available at the sheriff's website and personnel policies and procedures. So I think we'll commit to get an answer and maybe put it at the league's website or tell people where they can get that information.
That's it.
And remember, we were, all of this is secondhand. We didn't do our original, they were excellent reports on Andrea's group and others, but we're by no means experts. We're trying to facilitate being able to get people to find the information that they want in different places.
And you can also look for POST, which is the training that all law enforcement in California has to complete before they're hired. And so if you look that up, you should be able to have some of the courses that are taught in the training.
Can you say that again? Say that title.
Peace officers
Police
standards
officer safety standards and
training.
Training? That's
Peace officers standards and training.
I can answer that question real briefly for you. Just recently,
Hold on a sec, I'm gonna bring this to you. So we got, everyone can hear.
Once again, Dustin Lopez. But yeah, recently we just devised a 4-hour online course that depicts mental health training, and it's more explicit than the normal training they would get in the academy or something like that. That's something that's just been implemented. I believe it was implemented 3 months ago. And each deputy is required to go through that training, and extensively talks about mental health and mental health behaviors and how to identify those mental health behaviors.
Thank you. All right, in light of all the lawsuits, would it be better to hire and train better employees to work with this population?
And pay them.
Oh, that's what it says, thank you, and pay them more.
And, well, I'll make a short comment. Yes, the deputies that work in the jails are paid slightly less than the deputies that work out in the community. And so that is one of our recommendations, or that was recommended by someone we talked to. Yeah. Should Tom, anybody want to add to it?
But the main thing to consider is you do have a lot of good people working in law enforcement. There are a ton of angels and people who are very dedicated and who work in law enforcement. We have to consider also the climate in this country against law enforcement. So who in this room would volunteer to become a deputy to work in the jail system, not only with the climate that's going on in our country, but then also knowing the population that you would be working with? I don't know if there is an amount of money that could convince someone to do this type of work. So there are many, many facets to it. It's not just let's give the person more money. I certainly know that there are people who make a lot of money in their line of work, but they don't necessarily enjoy it, and they don't necessarily do a very good job at it.
Sorry, and then Jane cut me off if I talk too much, but another thing here is that I was in academia, and one of the answers is we need more data on that. But I think the sheriff does have, I forget the exact name of it, a quality improvement committee, and we've been working with Dustin and his staff to learn more about that. But I think ideally an organization would look at if there are people that aren't performing to a standard, why not? And those of you in HR know about what you have to do to make sure everybody's properly trained and properly supervised. So I don't think we could say for sure, but I think that probably the sheriff's office cares about that. And I think that the more that the community can know about what they're doing and how things stand, I think the better.
All right. Is the faith community involved in putting pressure on the sheriff?
And I know Yusuf Miller's group speaks almost every month after the clerk meetings, and I'm trying to remember Yusuf's. Is there?
But his is a faith community?
His is a faith community.
No, I don't think so.
No? Am I wrong?
Well,
Darwin,
let me,
Andrea?
can I take that again?
Equity Justice Coalition, it's not a faith group.
Oh,
Yeah, I think that one thing I've discovered is that there are a lot of different groups that have people that have overlapping memberships and are doing a lot of different things. So I think Yusuf Miller is involved in the North County Equity and Justice Coalition and Saving Lives in Custody, California. They're not faith-based, but I think that would be something that, make faith communities more aware of this and see if they want to get involved in this kind of work.
Do any of you know how the sheriff department triages clients to county mental health?
well, we know that they do with certain cases, but what we worry about is that our county does not have very many mental health beds, and the Board of Supervisors needs to work on that. In fact, we know that's a national problem, that we don't have enough mental health facilities to do that. And so it ends up with the county jails in many counties being their only resource. In fact, the largest mental health facility in the county. Anyone else?
Yeah, and we have in our meetings with Gus, and we've asked about that, and they've said they're going to get back to us with more details on the actual staffing and services by the behavioral health staff in the jails, including at intake.
And the courts have a really big role when, especially with people charged with more serious crime, with very serious mental health disabilities that don't allow them to effectively assist at their defense. The courts get involved, and the courts are the ones that make sure the person is separated until they can actually compete, but they don't get involved in the actual decision making by the jail. I'll leave it at that.
All right, at this point, I want to call Darwin Fishman up, who has some words to us about historical context and current work.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Darwin Fishman, he and his, with the Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego. And it's really powerful, the report and the presentation. And it's like the thing of how coming a long way. One thing I just want to offer real quickly is the history, since I'm intimately a part of the history of this. And some of the people that are here, actually, Adrian Durso and Lori Saldana, former assembly member, we're part of the history of why we're here in this room. And what it really started with, actually, is election 2016 and protest in 2017, where some of our friends in our group were arrested, and they filed complaints with the clerk. When we started attending those clerk meetings in 2017, 2018, 2019, that's when we started hearing people coming there, family members, impacted family members, telling their stories about their loved ones dying. And also key is that clerk wasn't serving them, district attorney wasn't prosecuting people. And this is my feedback, because the report is really powerful, but part of what's not captured in there, I'm more than willing to help you on this, is that human element. So it's not just these people dying in jail, but they're actively protesting, and they're actively upset, and they're working with folks like me, Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego, and Yusuf Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition, because that's where you get the hand in glove, where we're organizing on the ground, and then people like Jeff and Kelly are reporting, and the media is covering it. And that, in that sense, is what gave it the momentum. And then folks like Lori Saldana can speak to, she's the one that spearheaded with Dave Myers the statewide audit, and they pitched it to Dr. Akilah Weber, who was in the assembly at that time, and that's what not just gave it state coverage, but national coverage. Because what that report showed, the in-custody death audit, was one, what's been mentioned before about San Diego. This is 2022, having a record amount of deaths. It was 20. And then also being the leading county in California. And what I do to share for context, you might want to put this in the report, people are going to appreciate this, because you say, well, 20 in custody deaths in 2022, why is that such a big deal? It beat out Rikers Island. We had more in custody deaths than Rikers Island, which is supposed to be the worst of the worst of jails. And it's nice, sleepy San Diego that had that. And that's the whole point, is that it really had gotten out of control, and the in custody deaths were really that high. The other part, just say too, about preventable, again, that human element, it's true, and there's that technical part, but to say the least, if you go to clerk meetings, and I encourage everyone to go, to hear the impacted families describe what's happened to their family members, and to go through that process, and to also have things like not be able to find out what happened, and for it to take a year or 2 years before they get it. And then quite often it takes a lawsuit, they have to get a lawyer. The information's not released. It's just heart-wrenching. And I would say also, just final part about this, that human element is really key, as you can imagine, because you can get eyes glaze over when they look at the statistics, or it can just be overwhelming. And it's really important to know, which is why I started this thing about how far we've come, it really has been, and Tom's been intimately part of this too, with Surge and Racial Justice Coalition working together on this. A lot of groups, a lot of individuals coming together and doing a whole lot of work in different parts. Andrea's group did part of an audit of CLRB. And it's really critical because all of these things come together to help to apply the pressure to get the change that we need. Because what we quite often get is this notion of that the status quo, one, is fine, everything's great, and that things will naturally take course. And so that hasn't been the case. Attending the meetings makes a difference, like with CLRB and with the supervisors. That's what allows elected officials like Supervisor Monica Montgomery Stepp to introduce legislation and get it passed. It allows CLRB to make the improvements. That's why they were dinged in the statewide audit. CLRB especially was dinged. It was not just the Sheriff's Department, because it's the accountability part, and the civilian oversight is really critical. So I really appreciate this. Is wonderful to see, and it definitely also help you take this to other groups. And I think that that's a really key part. I think if you ask most people in San Diego about in-custody deaths, they would not identify it as a problem or an issue. It would be hard pressed to be able to, talk about any kind of numbers. And I'll just say, the other part of this, putting myself also out there, as someone that has been arrested and spent time in jail before, I would encourage you also, when you put the report out there, is to contact those impacted family members, include them in it, and talk about their experiences in the San Diego jails. It's very powerful when you're reading it. Of course, it's even at a very deeper level when you hear people talk about their experiences in jail. That continued to this day. And I think that's really key. And hopefully, again, for educating folks and getting people more involved in this work to be able to change the conditions. As we know, as of late of yesterday, that's still an issue that the supervisors are working on. So thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and to add that part to this. Yep.
Thank you very much. Should Dustin, our county deputy, be invited to speak? I think yes, if there's something you'd like to speak to us about.
First of all, thank you for inviting me. I was kind of surprised I got the invite yesterday. I looked at the context and I was like, you know what, I think I need to be there just as a voice for the Sheriff's Department. I don't want to stand here and defend any of these numbers because we could be here for a week. I could add some context to numbers, and that's what I always say. I appreciate what Tom said is, you can present a number, but there's data behind numbers and there's context behind numbers. I will say this, do I hear everybody's voice in this room? Yes, I do. I will say this, can we do a better job communicating to the public? I think it's one of our biggest downfalls is we do not communicate well with the public as far as what these numbers mean and basically the improvements we make. I am not here to defend the sheriff, but I will say she appointed me to this position and I can see from her heart that she really wants to improve the jails. This is like turning the Titanic. These are large systems. There's a lot of people. As we said, a very diverse population of people. Things are not going to change overnight. However, systemically, I think we have made some major changes over the last year or two, and those changes will continue. Can we do a better job? Yes, we can do a better job. Obviously, you see the presentation here, but I will ask you to look at some of the dates on those slides. We are talking 3 to 4 years ago. It's one of the hardest things about my job is I get questions all the time. What happened 3 years ago? What was happening 4 years ago? There was a different sheriff in place. There was different priorities in place at that point in time. These changes today that we're making, I think you will see over time in the next year or two. I can report right now, as of next month, November 3rd, NCCH Resources, which is basically a company that comes in and accreditates all our medical, mental health, and dental services will come in. They will audit us, and they will, over a 90-day audit, basically point out any deficiencies we have. At that point in time, we will try to correct those deficiencies and actually seek accreditation in those areas. So I just think there's major changes. Is there major changes to be made continually? Yes. I can tell you this job is not easy. You have to be you have to be good at a multitude of things. That's everything from running a business to understanding, mental health, understanding, the community and everything else. I appreciate, believe it or not, I appreciate being watched. I appreciate committees like this. I appreciate, and I hope you appreciate it too, Tom, and meeting with you, stuff like that. One of the first things I did in this job is I realized I needed to hear outside voices. I didn't need to hear inside voices. So I started collaborating with different groups to hear what they had to say. And some of these people have very good ideas, and some of those ideas are being implemented. So I just hope to continue that work, and I hope to hear, the community's voices.
Would you give your job title?
My job title is I'm the Assistant Sheriff of Detention Service Bureau. So, in the Sheriff's Department, you have the Sheriff, you have the Undersheriff, and then you have 3 Assistant Sheriffs, each overseeing a discipline, and I oversee our Detention Service Bureau. So when I wholeheartedly shoulder what you see on these slides.
Is that detention centers and jail?
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, both of them.
Same thing. It's we
Okay.
call them detention centers. People refer to them as jails. I could field any questions if there's any quick questions. If somebody does, go ahead.
I was curious about what, if any, mental health support is there for the employees
So very interesting. Yeah, didn't expect that question. There is a wellness unit that we have, and basically they could reach out to the wellness unit, and basically they will put them in contact of basically the best discipline they need as far as psychiatry or medical.
They have to reach out.
They do have to reach out.
Services provided that would be.
There is not an ongoing psychiatric evaluation or something like that, no. Go ahead.
Yes. In terms of human resources for the staff, is there a high staff turnover, and are there any issues recruiting a certain or a particular type of job for, job title or?
Are you talking in particular like professional staff or sworn staff like the deputies?
Both.
Yeah, I would say on the mental health clinicians, they are harder to recruit, and they are hard to recruit because in today's society, they're very sought after. So that particular class is harder to recruit and keep in the jail. I think we've done, let's be honest, COVID was a really bad era for employment and everything else. We lost a lot of nurses at that point in time, a lot of staffing at that point in time, but I think we're building back on those numbers. I think right now our numbers look stronger than they've looked in probably 3 years, and that's even on the deputy side.
Let's just take 2 more.
Sarah, what would it take to provide clear information that they need?
I would have to my answer was I think they get the information they need. I know, there was this, recently the board voted to give them access to our healthcare providers or else our contractors. Our biggest concern in that arena was basically our cross cost would be put back on the sheriff's department as far as liability insurance, because obviously there would be a high liability to these contractors or subcontractors, because now there would be an oversight body, and basically they would impose that back onto the sheriff's department. That was one of our biggest concerns.
Okay, 1 more.
Could you come back in about 6 months and tell us about the changes that have been implemented and how it worked?
Yeah, and so when I sit here out in the audience, that's one of the things that I'm sitting here and thinking is when I said there could be better communication, and I'm hearing Tom thinking, I'm thinking maybe the public is not hearing the changes that we're making. It's, it's funny because sometimes I even ask myself, does the public want to hear about this? Should I be out in front of this? Do they want to hear? But I hear from you that you do. So I could come back and do that. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, one more question. How can we expand advocacy while acknowledging that the oppressive power structures that exist in the state and country are beyond the sheriff's scope? Tom.
Well, I'd be happy to talk to somebody that wanted to get into that more, but a quick answer, and I think somebody else already said this, do what you can where you are. And there are some good arenas in San Diego County, the CLRB, the Board of Supervisors. So I think, and then find the advocacy organizations. I think they're in the report, the Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego and the other groups, and get on their membership lists and get informed about what they're doing, show up at press conferences, show up at rallies. Maybe some of them you can support financially. And I know the League's getting more involved with, they have some members going to the CLRB meetings, so I think just being persistent, and a lot of it is just a long, hard slog, you know, and if they say, we'll get back to you, make sure they get back to you, ask specific questions, always treat everybody with respect. I always assume goodwill, you know, people want to be doing the right thing. There are different ideas on what the right thing is, but this organization, I think, is already influential, and I think this is a field that you could do even more on, but, you know, sticking to some specific things that where there's some local control, I think, can be helpful.
Thank you. Katie.
And I just wanted to thank our committee, the Criminal Justice Interest Group, and this has been a wonderful merge of the expertise of Monica from her local government expertise, Tom with his social work expertise, and Stephanie for her legal expertise. It is just, and I've known, I guess it's the League, knowing about the League, how it works. But that combination just seemed to put things together very well. And would also like to say that we hope that the sheriff will stop fighting the changes. And then I think we'll get a lot more progress.
Terrific. Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you, team, and thank you all for coming.
Yes.
Please grab some food, and please come to more of our meetings. We have Zoom meetings. We try to have a monthly in-person of some kind, so come on round. Thank you so much. All right.